Welcome to Raising Financially Fit Families with Joline Godfrey podcast. I'm your podcast producer, RJ Malik, and Joline, it's good to see you again. How are you?
I am terrific. Happy to be here.
Excellent. I see you have a guest. So why don't you introduce your guest and then tell us what you two will be talking about on this edition of your podcast.
Well, this one I'm really excited about. Not that I'm not for all of my guests, just saying. But Earl and I spent some time together recently. And what's special about this conversation is that we're going to be talking about two elements of raising financially fit families. And that is what happens with financial education in the school and what happens with financial parenting and how the two of them work together. So that's the topic today.
Excellent. So why didn't you get to it then?
All right. Thank you so much. Earl, welcome. Good to see you again.
It's great to see you too.
And I have just introduced the topic, but why don't you introduce yourself to anybody listening this afternoon?
Sure. My name is Earl Walton. I'm the director of the Ross Roeder Institute at Shorecrest Preparatory School. The Ross Roeder Institute is our program to focus on financial literacy, economics, and entrepreneurship in our K through 12 school.
And a fine one it is, I have to say. And I have seen a lot of them. Let's pick up with how I'd actually like listeners to learn a little bit about how long the program's been going, how it got started, and what's special about it. And then we'll morph from there into some other things. But I think a little background on the program would be useful.
Sure. So the Ross Roeder Institute was launched 3 years ago at Shorecrest. So we had a donor who was very interested in financial literacy. You know, it's the typical conversation. You know, these kids today, they can't even balance a checkbook. Or, you know, the idea that, you know, the kids today are graduating without the basics in financial literacy, you know, and how to run a household. And so we had a couple of donors that came together and they raised some money, and the Ross Roeder Institute was born. And it was really a program focused on giving life skills to kids. But the terms that I like to use is our goal is that a kid who graduates from Shorecrest is a kid who can actively participate in their financial future. Like that's the real ultimate goal. Right? We walk out of these doors and you're ready for it. You're ready for the rent conversation. You're ready for your 401k contributions. You understand what all that stuff means. And you understand that a budget is a goal, you know, those types of things. So that's the program. And right now it runs from K through 12. So we do everything from, you know, winter markets and books that we read in our lowest to our youngest kids to introduce concepts. And then it spirals up all the way to business competitions and entrepreneurship classes and pitching businesses and innovation in our upper school.
I think one of the reasons I was so excited to be at the school, and if you recall, at one point I looked at you all and thought, this is my tribe. I have found you, which was extremely exciting for me after all these years. And partly what I meant was, as a school, you take a real developmental approach to this. You aren't starting kids when they're juniors in high school and already, you know, set in their ways, if you will. Talk a little bit about why you came to start so early. And then let's talk about the difference between parents and schools. But I just love that you are taking developmental stages seriously here.
Well, and that's what brought me to you. You know, I mean, that was reading your book was one of the things that said, oh my gosh, this is my tribe, right? This is the person who gets it. And I really love that because when I first started, and I don't come from I don't come from a school background. I come from a business background. And when we talked about developing a program, it was a platform, right? The idea of like, how do we build a platform that we can continue to add to and grow and enhance over the years? And, you know, just like any business, the first thing you do is you read about like, what is it? What do they do? And how does this work? And the big chief complaint is that financial literacy is kind of a program that comes in for a week or two and then it's gone. and there's none of the growth. And we looked at it as a program that we have this incredible gift of kids that are on the same campus from K through 12. And they're with us for 12 years. And we can work with them and spiral and scaffold a program that grows with them as they go through our school. So like I said earlier, that, when you look at, those books that they read in their first grade classroom, they're going to take that book and then they're going to go to the school store in their fifth grade classroom. And then they're going to create an entrepreneurship project in their eighth grade program. And then they're going to build a food truck and then.
Yeah.
And so what happens is it's repetition and repetition and repetition. And we're not hitting them over the head with it, but we're introducing it over and over and over again so that it's not a class and it's not a chore. It's a part of their culture. It's part of who they are when they graduate.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you and I are both singing to the choir here in a way that I think we both quite appreciate. And one of the things that I know I saw, and I'm curious if you saw the same thing, is one of the great pleasures, I think, of a parent sending their kid off to Shorecrest is that every parent really hopes in their heart that somebody will teach their kids this. And so they send them off and they're essentially outsourcing another expertise. But one of the reasons we do what we do in my company at Bounds is because we began to see that just outsourcing isn't enough. And there is this thing called financial parenting that is the rest of the story. But I see it from one side, obviously, when I'm working with families, and you see it in the school. What do you see that makes this resonate for you too?
Well, I joked with you when you were here. I said, I outsource math. And if there was a way to create, mathematical parenting, then I would be on board right away. Like, somebody teach me how to teach my kid math, because I'm failing every night. Every night I'm failing the math class.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. And it's like everything. And, I think the reality is it's just the recognition of how important the parent partnership and involvement is in any educational process. But this one is so real, and it is something that is happening on a regular basis. It's funny. We had quick story is that, my wife is, she runs the benefits department. And I had her come in to talk to the class about insurance. And the joke that I always make is that, like, look, you talk about work and I fall asleep. So try not to bore my students, and
perfect.
She was there, no pressure, right? No pressure at all. But she's a gamer. So my wife was like, all right, I'm in, let's see what we can do. And so she came into class and she started talking, and it was the most engaged the kids had been a guest speaker. And the reason being is that every one of those kids in class had stood with their parents at the checkout window of the doctor and talked about insurance. Every kid has had a boo-boo, been sick. Every kid has had this conversation. So when you start to talk about something they understand and they recognize, they're in. And so it's recognition that, that coupling of what's happening in the real life, the parenting piece needs to engage with what's happening in the classroom too. And that's how you create, a real education, a kid who actually can actively participate, like I mentioned.
Yeah, no. And God knows I've been around long enough. I've seen how when parents take their kids seriously and include them in those conversations, then they show up at class paying more attention. And when class can send them back to the parents in the same way, it's this wonderful circle that goes round that is very satisfying for the kid, and I think does make the educational experience that much richer. And so when we talk about engagement, we're really talking about deepening the child-parent relationship in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to turn us to something that I didn't give you any warning on, Earl, but it's been on my mind in a big way over the last few days. And I'm just going to try it out on you.
Hit me. I'm ready.
over the weekend, I was reading an Ezra Klein interview, and it was, of course, about what we're hearing about the Epstein files. And I've been feeling for weeks and weeks now, when I read the news, I have to take a shower right away. And it's been disturbing me really deeply. And I read this and I sent a note off to my team that I work with at Bounce. And I said, I don't want to be judgy or preachy, but I kind of feel like we need to start talking about moral compass in the context of economics. Because what I'm beginning to read in the ickiness of what I'm seeing here, is that we've got all these smart people with enormous privilege who nobody spoke up. Nobody seemed to tap their moral compass to act with moral courage to say, something seems wrong here. And I've been feeling that the work you and I do with the impressionable kids we have requires us to enter the conversation of moral compass with economics in a way that addresses this, again, in a meaningful way that works for them. Because I can't help but think these kids are watching us every day and wondering, who are you? What are you doing? So I raise this very sensitive topic, but I am surfacing it in my company and with my clients because I do think we have to talk about it. I'm curious if you have encountered any of this, or if anything I'm saying makes sense to you, or what your current thoughts are.
Oh boy, you're opening a big.
I know. And you can, you heard RJ earlier. We can revisit this if we need to. But I think I'm just feeling somebody's got to start talking about this, because kids are thinking about it and they must be talking amongst themselves, or not.
They're certainly aware of it, and at every level. You're not talking about, a high school kid is reading the news, a high school kid, and all these kids are on social media. So the idea of what's going on in the world, if we have any thought that our children aren't aware of what's going on in the world, it's absurd. Like, they know exactly what's going on. And what's worse is they know what's going on, but they don't know how to translate it in any way.
Right.
So they just know it and they hear it, and they make mistakes like they do with everything else with their translation of it. And so that being said, like, that's kind of the baseline. Like, our kids know what's going on. And it's our job to model behavior, because we can sit there and, if I've learned one thing as a parent first and as a teacher second, it is that my kids don't listen to the words that come out of my mouth. They do the things that they see me do. And that's the difference.
Right.
And so you have to set some kind of proper example. And modeling behavior. And what I see that is really positive is I see families that are engaged in philanthropy and use their wealth to do good things. I see their kids go and use their time to do good things, right? So
Yes.
That kid doesn't have the money, but they have the time. And that I see. And so I think 100%, I think it's absolutely a part of what you do. Like, money is power for so many people. And how you use your wealth and your time is the true measure of your ultimate success, I guess, in life.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think beginning to talk about it and bringing it out of the shadows, if you will, is really important. I miss Mr. Rogers in this time. I think he would have tackled this in some really smart, interesting ways. And it's interesting, even with my young staff, as soon as I raised the topic, I felt this enormous relief that somehow there was permission now to talk about something they were feeling pretty icky about too, but to your point, didn't know how to translate, and certainly didn't know how to bring it up in a social context, because everything is so charged these days. but I'm relieved and grateful to have you sort of join with me on this, because I think it opens again another bridge to parents. One of the things I say about the people I work with is that they are also the non-Epstein class. I don't think anybody who chooses to send their kids to your class or to my programs probably had much to do with the whole Epstein world, thank God. Um, but to your point, their kids are out there in the world watching and wondering. And if it's a topic that they can't ask about or can't talk about, then it just becomes too painful. And I think it adds to, we hear a lot about kids who are deeply anxious about their family's money, their family's business, or whatever it is they think their culture is. And largely, I think it's because they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to get any relief from that anxiety. So I'm hopeful that the work we're doing, and the more we can partner on it, the easier this is going to be. Another question, though, and I'll move away from this for a minute because I think this is also important, is you've got a young program, but I'm curious how you think this is new, what's different about it, what you hope is going to be different about it. How does this look compared to maybe financial education 15, 20 years ago?
Well, I think the way it looks differently is that it's I don't think there was that much of this.
Yeah.
15 or 20 years ago. I think it was, I think there was the home ec, but I also think it's like what we're seeing now. I don't know, there's a lot of things in this that are just really interesting. It's one of the things I love about what I'm doing is, I've been on the entrepreneur side of business. I've seen different businesses grow and innovate. And it's the innovation of like the speed that our kids are processing information and learning new things is so fast. And so there's a part of it that's, welcoming that in and making sure that's a part of their learning process. Like that's super interesting. But I think what is really interesting for us and what makes our program unique is that every school seems to have an entrepreneurship program right now. Every kid's an entrepreneur.
Interesting.
Right? It's 10th grade. You're going to take the entrepreneur class because it's easy and it's creative and I can do that and it's going to be great. And they're amazing. And it brings out this amazing thing that kids have, which is their creativity and their critical thinking skills and all that. And I love that. I think that what we're so focused on here is the foundational elements of financial literacy. Like the idea that if I can understand how this stuff works first and understand that just the simple ideas, right? It's the idea of wants versus needs. If I can start there, because believe it or not, that's a concept not everybody understands, but wants and needs, start there. I can go anywhere. And then we do ours is kind of very focused on those orders. It's financial literacy first. We talk about economics. Economics is the idea of how does the world work and that worldview of the economy and how things go. And that's, those are our simple, those are economics classes that we teach in school. But once I've got those things, then I know how things work. Then I can be creative. Then I can innovate. Then I can see what the future looks like. And that's where entrepreneurship really becomes real.
Yeah.
And that's where it's not just like sitting in a room kind of thinking of crazy ideas. It's like, ooh, I've been looking at this part of the world and I think I can make it better. And that's what's exciting. Like that's what really drives, what a kid can really do with this type of education.
As I'm listening to you, I think, and where financial parenting comes in, is the parents that we work with want to know, well, do I give them money for this program? Do I ask them for a business plan? How much do I support them? What do I do? What if they fail? What if they lose money? What I love about the work we're doing is the coaching of the parent while you're getting that student ready is equally powerful. And when the two come together, it's really magic. You know, particularly with little kids, the parent who thinks it's so cute for the lemonade stand and they go out and they buy everything and they never mention how much the sugar costs and how much the lemons cost. And, oh, you lost 6 glasses because you broke them or whatever.
Or you drank them.
Or you drank them or you give them away or whatever. And yet the kids whose parents focus and attend to the critical thinking, as you put it, those children are so hungry, again, to be taken seriously and to really learn because they're little sponges at that point. I'm really struck with how when you can put the two pieces together, the confidence of doing financial parenting properly with the skills the kids are getting in your classes, our shot at building a new generation of innovators is really pretty powerful at a time when I think people are despairing about where the innovation's coming from. In some ways, I feel as though we have an opportunity at a kind of renaissance here in a very special way.
Yeah.
But, getting that across is new. And so it's going to take us a while to do that. That said, I'm just curious. You had a young man who was going to go talk to his uncle about his uncle's business. Do you know if that's gone anywhere since?
It has. And so the conversation goes, it goes into the dual goals, right? So as parents, we have parental goals for our kids. And then we have a kid who says, I kind of think I want to go this way. And then it's actually a really great kind of conversation that's opened up between him and his parents about where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? And then is there a place in the middle where we're seeing something great? So the exploration goes into different types of college programs, right? So we're a college preparatory school. That's who we are. And
right.
When you look at the trades, and he's such a smart kid, and the family's very smart because they're like, all right, well, let's look at this from a standpoint of it's not just a job, right? It's like, what's your goal? What are we trying to achieve? Where do you want to go with this? And they've been able to explore some really rich, interesting opportunities in his next level of education and compare and contrast. Which one's going to serve you better? Which one's going to serve the goals? Where do you want to get to? So it's been a really great process for him. And that's what's really, I think a lot of, especially at the high school level, I think a lot of this programming is about piquing their interest, like, showing different opportunities, because it's interesting to talk. When I talk to kids about what they want to do, there's still a lot of blinders. Like when you talk to kids about their college choices, their first 5 college choices are usually colleges that have made it to the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Because they're the brand names that they know.
Right.
And it's the same thing with careers. Like, what do you want to do? Well, I know these 5 careers because I've heard them because either my parents do them or somebody we know does them, but I didn't know I could do this. And
exactly.
So exposure to those things and those conversations. That's why I love your conversation about like your aunts and uncles. It's like, I know what mom and dad does for a living and I know what my neighbor does, but I didn't know that Uncle Bobby did this thing. That's really cool. Like, that's pretty neat. And that exposure is amazing.
Well, it's interesting because we think because children or teenagers have such access to TikTok and social influencers that the world is theirs, but it's beginning to appear that that narrows the world. The number of kids who want to be social influencers themselves, for example, is right up there with NCAA. And you think, wait, you're missing all this other stuff out there. And I think the conversation you're alluding to is tapping hidden human capital in the family to get some more role models, to get some more inspiration. And I think whether it's financial parenting or the financial programming you're doing, we're both trying to open up the world to these kids so that they begin to have both a different sense of economics that has some humanity in it and also really speaks to their values in a deeper way. It is not just about the money. It is about their lives. And I think that part of the work we each bring to the party from different directions is what is very hopeful for me as we look at these issues of moral compass in the world these days. And I do appreciate you taking on that topic because it's on my mind in a big way today, and I'm not willing to avoid it completely. So I appreciate this.
I know I think it's on everybody's mind. Well, it's in everybody's face.
Yes. And everybody's feeling icky. I'm not alone in the ickiness here. So
Not at all. Not at all.
I want to thank you for joining me today. And I hope we can have a continued conversation about this because I do feel as though we're doing important work. And I love what you're doing there at Shorecrest. So we'll keep this up. And I want to come back and hear more about the young man who's looking at the philosopher plumber conversation here down the road.
I would love that too. I enjoy the conversation. I always enjoy a conversation with you, and having you come in and meet with our kids and our parents is always.
We'll do it again.
It was fun eavesdropping in on the conversation. I have to say, I enjoyed it. Before you go, Earl, would you like to share some contact information?
Sure. You can reach out to me. My email address is Walton, EWALTON @shorecrest.org.
As always, it's a pleasure, Joline, to like I said, eavesdrop on your conversations. Very interesting, and you're right. This is a conversation that you can continue in the future, and it's something that's very important. And so, as always, looking forward to your next podcast. And thank you for listening to today's Raising Financially Fit Families with Joline Godfrey podcast. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with friends and family. If possible, rate this podcast and leave a review because this actually helps others find the show. Until our next podcast, for Joline Godfrey, I'm RJ Malik.